couple of years ago, I bought a gaming computer on Facebook Marketplace. I've been wanting to buy one for a while, and I knew that they're typically very expensive. So that gave me the idea to go on Facebook Marketplace and look for a used one. After several days of looking, I found one that I wanted. I decided to reach out to the seller and ask a little more information about it. The seller was a guy named Jeremy. We went back and forth a little bit, and I decided that I wanted to buy it. It was a pretty good deal, so we agreed on a day that I would go over and get the computer. It also came with a monitor, keyboard, and mouse as well. So after I bought it, I took it home, set it up, and started using it. I was happy with my purchase, and I used the computer for the next week and a half. Then I got another message on Facebook from Jeremy. He said that he wanted his computer back. I was really confused when I saw this, because he had just sold it to me like a week before. He said that he changed his mind and wanted it back now. I didn't want to return it. I liked the computer, and I had already installed several games and other programs on it. I told Jeremy no, I wasn't going to return it. Then Jeremy said that he would give me a certain amount of money for it. The funny thing is that the amount he offered was less than I paid for the computer by a few $100s. I pointed that out, and he said that it was all he could afford to give. Now, when he originally said he wanted it back, I assumed that meant he would pay the full price. I said the answer was still no. I was really annoyed that this guy was trying to get the computer back, and even more annoyed that he wasn't offering the full price. If he didn't want to sell it, then he shouldn't have sold it. However, Jeremy was not happy that I refused to give the computer back. He then sent me a friend request on Facebook, and then started messaging me a bunch of times. I ignored him for a while, but after he kept sending me messages for like 3 days straight, I blocked him. I thought that was that. This situation was strange enough. But unfortunately, that was not the end of Jeremy. Probably about a week after I blocked Jeremy, he showed up to my house. I happened to be home alone and was in my bedroom, on the very gaming computer that I had bought from Jeremy. It was nighttime and about 8 p.m. and dark out. I heard a knocking coming from the front door. I got up and left my room and went over to the living room and then looked out of the window. Jeremy was there on the front step. I recognized him from when I bought the computer. How did he know where I lived? This was really strange. I watched him stand there and knock again on the front door. I was wondering what on earth he had planned. Did he think that by showing up at my house unannounced that would make me change my mind? I stayed in the living room and ignored his knocks. I was hoping that he would just go away, and most of the lights in my house were off, so maybe he would think that I wasn't home. But I watched Jeremy hang around the front step for several more minutes. I was kind of looking around, and I had to move back from the window so that he wouldn't see me. He came back and knocked again on the front door, this time louder. He also yelled, asking for me to come outside. I still ignored him. I walked back to my bedroom, hoping that Jeremy would eventually give up and leave. When I got back to my room, I put in some headphones and sat back down at my computer. For the next 5 minutes or so, everything was fine. But suddenly, I heard a knocking sound. I took out my headphones and looked to the direction of my window. Jeremy was standing there, looking into my bedroom. I got up and ran over to the window and closed the blinds. Jeremy started yelling at me, but I couldn't really hear what he said very well. I left my bedroom and went back towards the living room. By that time, Jeremy had made his way back towards my front door. Then he started banging on it again. I went over to the door and shouted to him that I was going to call the police. Jeremy yelled at me to give the computer back. Then I called the cops. I told them what was going on, and Jeremy still wasn't leaving, and he continued to stay there, even after I got off the phone with the police. But unfortunately, he finally left just moments before the cops got there. I talked to them, gave them a description of Jeremy, and told them my side of the story. After that, the police left and said to call back if Jeremy ever returned. I was afraid that he would, but luckily he didn't. I still have a hard time believing how crazy it was, and I can't believe that that actually happened. I had recently gotten a new car and had to sell my old one. I had bought it used, and it was kind of old, so I listed it on Facebook Marketplace. I was told that was a good place to sell a car. It seemed better than Craigslist, which always seemed a little bit sketchy to me. So after listing the car, I did receive a few messages about it in the first couple of days, but none of them really went anywhere. Then I would get the first serious interest. It was a man by the name of Ben on Facebook. He messaged me and said that he wanted to buy my car. We talked briefly, and basically the guy wanted to meet up and look at the car as soon as possible. I suggested a nearby shopping center parking lot for us to meet. At this point, it was sometime in the afternoon, and Ben wanted to meet that same night. I said that would be fine, and we agreed on 8:30 p.m. in the back of the parking lot. The shopping center had quite a few stores and a very large parking lot. Most of it was usually always empty. It was maybe 10 minutes from my house. So I ended up going there expecting to meet Ben, who was seeming to be a serious buyer. I arrived slightly early, and after getting there, let Ben know that I was there. Then I just waited. Some time went by, and 8:30 came and went. Ben still hadn't showed up. I messaged him, asking where he was. He didn't respond though. I was getting frustrated. It appeared as though he had changed his mind about the car without telling me. After waiting past 9 o'clock, I finally left and started driving back home. About 10 minutes later, I arrived. At the time, I lived alone in a smaller house. As I was driving down my street, which is usually very quiet, I noticed headlights quickly coming up behind me. I remember thinking to myself, that person was going a little bit fast for this street. By the time I reached my driveway, they were right on my tail. So I pulled into my driveway, expecting them to drive past, but then the car that was behind me pulled in right after. Now my driveway was pretty short, but sort of wide. It could barely take two cars in front of each other. The car I usually drove was in the garage, and I was driving the one that I was trying to sell. So after this car pulled in behind me, I could only see the bright headlights shining in. I had a bad feeling about it. I wasn't expecting anyone at my house, and had no clue as to who this could be. But then I got the idea that maybe it was the guy from Facebook Marketplace. I knew that I couldn't get out of my car, so I turned to the right a little. Then I saw the car behind me start to turn to the right. I didn't know what exactly to do. I wanted to leave, but I felt like my car might be stuck there. The car behind me then started honking. I did not recognize the vehicle and was 100% sure that I didn't know this person. I then turned my wheel and just hit the gas. My car narrowly missed my garage, but I made it. Then I started to make a U-turn, but the car ended up going into the grass of my front yard off of the driveway. When I did this, the car behind me started backing up and turning to try to keep up with me. I was able to make it out of the driveway and started going down my road as quickly as I could. The car behind me was soon able to follow. I drove to the end of my street and then went through some residential streets for a short time. Then eventually I made it to a busier road. I traveled on that for a while, and then sometime over there is when the car behind me stopped following. I'm not sure when, because I was looking forward for several minutes, and there were also some other cars out on that road, but sometime whoever was following me stopped. Then I carefully went back home. Luckily, I didn't see the car again. I just have a feeling that that was Ben from Facebook Marketplace. He was probably just trying to follow me home and never even wanted to look at the car. Maybe he was going to try to steal the car or rob me. That's my best guess. But when I went back onto Facebook, he had blocked me. I tried reporting it to Facebook Marketplace, but I'm not sure what could really be done. After that though, I haven't used Facebook Marketplace since. I was by myself at home a few years ago, and a really bad storm hit. I lived alone in a smaller house in the suburbs. It was probably about 8 p.m. when it started raining. Just before sunset, I had noticed that the clouds were pretty dark, and it seemed that a storm was brewing. The wind also picked up, and just after sunset, it started raining. Things picked up quite a bit, and I remember that there was a severe thunderstorm warning in my area as well. I was just staying inside and having a normal night, other than hearing the thunder outside occasionally. But about 20 or 30 minutes into the storm, the power suddenly went out. My TV shut off, the lights went out, and it became pitch black. Everything went silent as well. Now I could only hear the sound of the falling rain outside and the thunder, It was not that uncommon for the power to go out in a really bad storm. It had happened a couple of times over the years that I had lived there. Usually, it would not be out for too long, maybe a couple of hours at most. I went on my phone for a while, because I couldn't do much else. Then, I went over to the front window and looked out, just watching the storm. The rain was still coming down very heavy. I could see my entire front yard, and then parts of the street and a couple of neighbors' houses. As I sat there looking out the front window for a while, I noticed somebody walking down the street. This was odd, because there was no sidewalk on my street, but it was also weird to see somebody out walking in such a thunderstorm. The person was wearing a black rain jacket, and appeared to be a man, but I couldn't see very well. He walked down the street in front of my house, and then I left the window and sat back down on the couch. For probably about the next 10 minutes, I was just on my phone and sitting on the couch in the living room. But then, I remember it kind of sounded like somebody was trying to open the back door to my house. It instantly made me a little bit nervous, but I quickly thought that possibly it was just the sound of something else. I mean, the storm was sort of loud. Maybe something got blown into the back door or something. I couldn't hear that well, but with the power being out, I did hear things from outside much better. So I walked around slowly to the back end of the house. That's where my kitchen was, and I looked out of a back window. Because my house was so dark, I had much better visibility looking out the back. When I did, I looked near the door but saw nothing. This made me feel better until I looked around the rest of the yard. When I did, I noticed that the same man who I had seen walking down the street was back there. My backyard was not very big. The man was at the far side near the fence and walking towards the corner of the yard. It appeared as though he might walk into my next door neighbor's backyard. I had no idea who this guy was or what he was doing, and it was still pouring rain out. I thought that the man might look over and see me in the window, so I moved away from it and I went back towards my living room. I didn't really know what to do about this situation. I stayed in the living room for maybe the next 20 to 30 minutes. Then I heard a knocking sound coming from the back door to my house. It was really surprising to me. I was sure that the man in the backyard had been leaving, but I knew that this had to be him. The knocking was very loud and startling. I got up and walked back to look to the window, but when I got there, nobody was at the door. I looked out of a back window and all around my yard. However, I did not see anybody. I kept looking for like 10 minutes, but never saw anything. I went back into the living room after that. There were no more knocks or strange noises. Less than an hour later, the storm stopped and my power was restored. I kept an eye out back for the rest of the night though, but didn't see the guy again. This took place last summer. I was at home by myself one evening. I live with my husband, but he was at a sports game with one of his friends, and I knew that he would be gone until much later. It was a normal night, and probably about 9 p.m. or so. Suddenly, out of nowhere, the power went out. Everything went black, and I found this to be really strange. It was not storming outside, so I didn't know why this would happen. I knew that we had paid the electric bill like always, so at that point, I went on my phone and onto the app of our electric company that we have. I looked to see if there were any reported power outages in the area. Sometimes, if there are, it will say the cause of it, and it will also say when the power should be restored. So when I logged onto the app, I did not see any information about it. I was trying to figure it out on there for a few minutes, but did not have any luck. As I was doing this, I then heard the sound of glass breaking coming from the back of my house. It was very loud and alarming, especially because everything was so quiet and dark. I could only see from the light on my phone, and I got up and used it to guide my way to the back side of the house. When I got closer, I heard some noises coming from near the back door area. When I finally got within view of the back door, I suddenly stopped. I saw that the window to the back door was smashed, and an arm was reaching its way inside. Somebody was right outside of the door. I couldn't see who it was, but it really freaked me out, and I instantly turned in the other direction. I ran away and went as fast as I could to the bedroom. It was hard to see, but I was able to make it there. When I got inside of the bedroom, I quickly closed the door behind me and then locked it. Then I went all the way into the bedroom closet and hid inside. When I got there, I called the police on my phone. I said how somebody had broken into my house, and because of how quiet it was, I heard the back door open and the guy walk in. I did not know who it was or what he looked like, but I gave the police as much information as I could. The thing that really mattered was that there were officers on their way to my house. So I heard the guy walking around inside for a few moments, but when I got off the phone with the police, I didn't really hear him anymore. I listened closely, but heard nothing. I wasn't really sure what was going on. Still, I didn't dare move or make a sound, and I remained hidden inside of the bedroom closet. I was afraid that any second I would either hear footsteps outside of the door or hear the door starting to turn. If this guy broke the back door window to get in, who knows what he would do? There was probably a way that he could break down the bedroom door despite it being locked. As time went by though, I still didn't hear anything. Within 10 minutes, the police had arrived. They made their way into the house through the back door. Then they searched the entire house, and when they made it to the bedroom, I finally left. However, the police never found the man. The window was still smashed to the back door, and the back door was also left open, but the guy was gone. The police even searched around the neighborhood a little bit, but whoever had broken in had left and was nowhere in sight. And inside the house, everything remained in place. Nothing was stolen or anything. But the police found that the power lines had been cut, probably by the man who broke in. Why he did this, I don't know. I'm guessing it wasn't an accident. I called my husband and he came home. The police then left after getting information about the incident. Since this has happened, we got the window replaced and also installed security cameras. Nothing else suspicious has happened though. This is the story of when I lost my phone at a park several years ago. It all happened one night when I was running. I would do lots of jogging for exercise, and this one park in particular was my favorite to go to. It was about a 10-minute drive from my apartment, but it had miles of trails, and I found that hardly anybody else was ever there. One time though, when I was jogging, my headphones died when I was almost done. This is probably why I didn't realize I dropped my phone, because my music wasn't on, and I would have noticed it turning off. I would always jog with my phone in my left pocket. It must have just fallen out or something. I was kind of surprised that I didn't notice. When I got home that night is when I realized that I didn't have my phone with me. I realized it could have been anywhere on the trail. I first looked in my car, but when it wasn't there, I drove right back to the park. I retraced my steps and spent about an hour trying to locate my phone, but I couldn't find it. I wasn't sure what to do. I really needed my phone, so the next day I went and I bought a cheap one to use until I either found my phone or decided that I would have to get another one. The next day after work, I went back to the park again. I looked again, but came up empty. I was almost certain by now that somebody must have picked it up. Then, later that night, I was on Facebook. I was on my laptop, just on my homepage, when I came across this post. It had been shared quite a few times, and I saw that somebody had posted they found an iPhone. It looked like mine, so I clicked on the post. This person said that they found an iPhone in a park and were trying to locate the owner. They asked people to share the post in hopes that the owner might see it. The phone was locked, so they said they couldn't find out who it belonged to. Right away, I contacted the person who made the post. It was a guy named Rob. I told him that I was sure this was my phone, and I asked him if I could meet him to get it back. He said yes, and suggested that we meet at the same park where I lost it. I was more than fine with that, but when he said to meet at midnight, I was confused. Of course, that instantly made me curious and also suspicious. I asked him why and said that was really late. The guy claimed that he worked odd hours and was really busy. He said that was literally the only time that worked for him. I ended up saying fine, because after all, it was a Friday and I didn't have work the following day. Still, I was very suspicious of Rob. Now, when the time came, I drove to the park that night. In the entrance of the park, there was a parking lot which was empty. Then there was a little bit of a field, several entrances to paths, and lots of woods. So So I parked my car at about 11:50. Nobody else was there, so I waited. At midnight, I contacted Rob, saying that I was at the park. This was the only parking lot, so I knew he would have to come here. He did not immediately respond to me. I kept waiting and was getting more and more frustrated by the minute. Then I got a message from Rob. He told me to come to the path and said that he had walked there. This confused me even more, but I really wanted my phone, so I got out of my car and looked around. It was completely silent other than leaves rustling in the wind. I took a few steps towards the path. It was in that moment that I saw what appeared to be two large men coming out of the woods. They were walking in my direction, but a long ways away. By now, I was probably like 50 feet away from my car. As soon as I saw these two guys, I started sprinting back for my vehicle. When I got there, I did not bother to look back to see where the men were. I instantly left, driving away and out of the park. I went all the way back home. When I got back, I went onto Facebook and was going to message Rob. I saw that his previous message had been deleted. I sent him an angry message, accusing him of setting me up, trying to rob me, and I said that I was going to the police. He responded denying it, claiming that he was just running late and would be at the park soon. I called the police. I told them the entire story and showed them the messages on my phone. Then I asked Rob to send me my phone in the mail. He was hesitant and claimed that he couldn't do it. However, the police contacted him after that. After they got involved, he finally gave me my phone back. Unfortunately, there was no proof that Rob got those guys to come towards me in the woods. I believe 100% that he was setting me up to get robbed or something. I blocked him not long after. Hopefully, I never see him again. Just a few months ago, I had a terrifying experience that I will never forget. It all started one night when I went on Facebook. As I was browsing the homepage, looking at posts from my friends and stuff, I got a notification of a new message. I clicked on it and saw that it was from a guy named James. I had worked with James a while back briefly. I didn't really know him that well, and had only spoken to him a few times at the job that we shared. I hadn't worked there in over a year though, and I didn't even know if he still worked there. James said hi to me, and I found it a little bit strange for him to randomly message me, but I said hi back to him. We got to talking a little bit, just catching up, or so I thought. But not long into this conversation at all, the messages from James started getting inappropriate. I stopped messaging him at that point, but he continued to send me more messages. It was at that moment that I decided to delete him as a friend. I wasn't even really friends with him in real life. I didn't know what got into him for him to randomly message me and then talk like that, but I figured that I wouldn't hear from him anymore. Several days went by, and I didn't. But then, one night, I was home by myself in my apartment. There was a random knock at my front door at 10 o'clock. I was not expecting anybody. I got up and walked over to the door. Before I opened it though, I decided to check through my peephole to see who was there. I thought maybe it was a neighbor, because who else would it be? But James was standing there. I found this to be really odd. How did he know where I lived? I never told him that. I chose not to answer, but he knocked again. I ignored this too. I honestly figured that he would probably leave after I didn't answer the door. I walked away and didn't hear any more knocking for a while. So I remember that probably 10 minutes later, I got up and went back over to the door. I expected James to be gone, but he wasn't. He was still standing there right outside of my door. And I think that he must have heard me walking to the door from the other side, because right after seeing him, he walked up to the door and tried to open it. The door was locked, so he didn't get in. Then I saw him go to his pocket and take something small out. He then went to the door and I believe started trying to pick the lock. As soon as I saw this, I took out my phone and I called for the police. I told them what was happening. They said they would be there as soon as possible. Then I went into my bedroom and locked the door. In case James broke in, I needed to get away from the front door. The police were fast to arrive. Within probably 5 minutes, they were at my apartment. James had not been able to pick my lock or get inside. I remember hearing them talk to James, and I came out of my room and saw that they arrested James for attempting to break into my apartment. I never really got an answer as to why he did it, or why then. Either way, I'm hoping to never see James again.
My name is Bree. When I went to high school, during my senior year, early on in the first semester, I remember noticing this one new kid in our school. I would call him Dave for this story. I had never seen him at our school before, and I had a history class with him. For the most part, that's all I knew of him. Beyond that, I didn't really notice him much at all. The next semester, I didn't have any classes with Dave. It was pretty early on in that second semester that one of my friends told me something shortly after I had gotten to school one day. She told me that Dave had been posting some really weird and borderline creepy Snapchat stories of me. Nobody in my friend group was friends with Dave on Snapchat, but apparently my friend had heard from a mutual friend about it. Somebody who was friends with Dave on Snapchat had seen his stories and found them really odd. When I asked for examples, I was told that he had occasionally taken photos of me in class or in the hallway without my knowledge. Other times, he would post random pictures and mention me for whatever reason. To me, this did seem pretty strange, and I felt like I should tell Dave to stop. But I knew this might be really awkward to do, or he might deny it altogether. I thought about it for a little while, but I never really saw Dave anymore anyways. I didn't have any classes with him anymore. Plus, I never saw him in the hallways in between classes either. Our school was pretty big, with about 2,000 students total. Over time, I just kind of ignored it. I figured that maybe he was a bit of a creep, or maybe he had a crush on me. But if he didn't see me anymore, he would get over it. Roughly 2 weeks after finding out about this, I was told once again by a friend that Dave had posted a weird story about me. My friend had actually befriended Dave on Snapchat to see his stories. He posted a picture of my car in the student parking lot, saying the caption, "My favorite girl's car." Obviously, I found this really weird, and I knew that I needed to ask Dave to stop. Unfortunately, I could never seem to find Dave in the hallways, and I didn't want to go out looking for him. I decided that I would just add Dave on Snapchat, just for the purpose of asking him to stop posting weird things about me. So that day, when I got home from school, I asked my friend for Dave's username, and she gave it to me. Once I added Dave, he added me back, and he immediately snapped me saying hi. I snapped him back, telling him that I was made aware of the strange things that he was posting about me, and that I needed him to stop doing so. He opened my snap, but didn't reply. Then, I deleted him. A couple of hours later, when I was in my bedroom, I suddenly heard a loud noise against my window. I had been at my desk finishing homework, which was about 5 feet from the window. I looked over to it, and there was another loud bang. This time, the window broke, and glass shattered everywhere. I jumped back and saw Dave standing right outside the window. He then started cursing at me. I was terrified. I already knew he did some creepy things, but this was really crossing the line. Then he came closer and started to crawl through the broken window. I jumped up and ran out of the room. My parents were home, but on the other side of the house in the living room. I ran over to them and was frantically screaming that somebody had broken in. Dave did not leave my bedroom, and after we called the police, he must have left because when they got there, he was gone. Thankfully, I knew exactly who he was, and he was found that same night. It was a bad idea for me to add him on Snapchat because my location was on, and I guess Dave could see exactly where I lived then. Since then, I've turned my location off, and I'm much more careful of who I add on Snapchat. Nothing else crazy like this has happened to me though. This story happened back when I was in college. Like many college guys, I used Snapchat quite a bit. I had probably over 1,000 Snapchat friends and would communicate with most of my friends through the app. I got to know a lot of my classmates better through snapping them or having snap streaks. Anyways, to get to the story, it all started one night when I was studying in my bedroom. I lived in a house with 2 roommates who were some good friends that I had made my freshman year. I had my own bedroom upstairs in the house, and so did each of my roommates. When I study, I tend to get distracted by my phone quite a bit, and when I looked at it on my desk, I saw somebody had added me on Snapchat. It was a girl named Kaylee. Her username didn't have a last name in it, just a bunch of numbers, so I wasn't quite sure who she was, but I figured that she went to my school, which is pretty large. I added her back, and I snapped her a picture of my face saying hi. She snapped me back, and she appeared to be around my age. We snapped back and forth for the rest of the night, and she told me that she also went to my university. The next night, I found myself home alone and bored. Both of my roommates went to their intramural sports games, and I had stayed home with an assignment, but I finished much earlier than I thought I would. I was still snapping Kaylee, and I told her about my situation. That's when she asked if I wanted her to come over. I really hadn't expected that, and I would have expected her to want to meet in a public place, or at least snap a few days before meeting, but I was cool with it. Kaylee asked me for my address, and I gave it to her. Both me and her were both on the snap map, and it appeared that she lived on the other side of campus. Kaylee snapped me that she was leaving and would be at my place shortly. I went down and attempted to clean up the house a little bit. About 15 minutes later, there was a knock at the front door. I walked downstairs, expecting to see Kaylee, but instead saw some guy. There was a guy with a jacket and winter hat standing at the front door. I was really confused. I opened up the door crack and asked what the guy wanted. He told me that he was Kaylee's friend and had given her a ride to my house. He told me that Kaylee was in the car down the street, but he wanted to make sure it was safe and I wasn't some crazy person. He told me that he was just trying to look out for her and asked if he could come inside and look around. I was really weirded out by this. It caught me by surprise, and I told the guy to give me a second, and then I closed the door. I checked the snap map, and it showed Kaylee as being literally right outside of my front door, right where the guy was standing. I knew this wasn't right. I snapped Kaylee, asking who the guy was. She began typing quickly, and as she was typing, I looked outside and saw the guy typing on his phone. Eventually, she sent me a chat, and it said basically the same thing that the guy had said. The guy then knocked on the door again. I yelled from the other side for the guy to just leave, and I wasn't falling for his tricks. I then watched him walk away, and thankfully, he left. About 20 minutes later, I got a snap from Kaylee. I opened it to see a picture of the guy flipping me off. I opened it, but didn't respond. A short time later, I got another snap. This one was of the same guy saying, "You still fell for a fake girl, you effing idiot." I then blocked the account. He was right in the fact that I had fallen for a fake girl, but I had seen pictures of her and wondered how he had done it. After some research though, I learned that the guy probably got some type of app that allows you to send pictures of snaps of whatever you want without it appearing as an uploaded photo. It's complicated, but not too hard to figure out. All the guy needed was multiple selfies of the same girl. I had noticed that her selfie style was a little different, but I looked past it. This whole thing was kind of embarrassing for me, but I'm just happy to say that I'm okay. Jamie. A few years ago, several strange things started happening. It all began around Facebook. I logged into my account one day to find a new message from somebody. I used Facebook pretty regularly at the time, and I had for years. Over all the time that I had a Facebook, I received hundreds of friend requests. I certainly didn't know many of the people on my friends list. I would probably get about 5 to 10 friend requests per week on average, and most of the time I would just accept them. The message that I had received looked like spam. It was like multiple links, and those links were really long. There was no text to go along with the links, and I didn't open them. It was sent from some guy with no profile picture. I figured that he was some spam account, and I accidentally accepted a friend request from him or something in the past. I deleted the conversation and unfriended the guy, but only the next day, I got a very similar message. It was from another user. This time, the user did have a profile picture, but it was really generic. I think it was just a logo of a sports team. This person had also sent some random links. By now, I was suspecting that there was some type of Facebook hack going around, and spam messages were being sent. I just deleted them and went on, but they didn't stop. The next day, I had spam messages from multiple accounts. I was wondering what was going on. Then, the day after that is when things got even weirder and took a creepy twist. I saw that I had a friend request, and when I looked at it, the username was Jamie Smith sucks. Jamie Smith is actually my real name, and I also got a friend request with somebody with the username Jamie Smith is an idiot. I clicked on these profiles, and they looked like they had just been created. Somebody was seemingly trying to mess with me. I didn't know who, and I didn't know why. Obviously, I declined those goofy friend requests, and I decided that I would not go on Facebook for a few days. I deleted the app from my phone, and I didn't go on it through my laptop either. But I couldn't escape the strange things. The next day or two went by fine, but then, one night at about midnight, there was a knock on my front door. I lived by myself in an apartment, and I walked over to the door wondering who would be there so late. No one was there when I looked. The next day, this happened again. A knocking at my door, but nobody was there when I looked outside. The day after that, I left my place to find that there was a picture on the floor right in front of my door. The picture was my Facebook profile pic, and it appeared as though somebody had just printed it off on a piece of paper. This was really starting to concern me, but I had no idea what could be done about it. The last straw was the next day. It was 11 o'clock at night, and I was home in my apartment. There was once again another knocking at my front door. Immediately following the knock, I heard that the knob to the door was turned. Luckily, the door was in fact locked. I walked over and looked out. No one was there again. I opened up the door, and on the ground was at least 100 pieces of paper with my profile picture printed on them. They were all stacked in a pile. I took them all and went to the police the next day. I told them everything and made a report. Beyond that, there wasn't much that I could do. But surprisingly, after I went to the police, everything just stopped. There was no more knocks at my door, no more things left outside, and no more weird Facebook messages or friend requests. I still don't know who did that to me though. This happened many years ago in 2013. I used Facebook quite a bit back then, but I don't really use it at all anymore. On a daily basis, I would use the Facebook app on my phone, and had the Messenger app as well. I talked to several of my friends that way, and when this happened, I was about 19 years old. I had probably upwards of 500 friends on there, which is a lot of people, but I've seen accounts with thousands. Anyways, I got a friend request from a girl named Veronica. I saw that we had about 5 mutual friends, and based on her picture, she looked nice. I looked at her profile page, but there wasn't much there. Just her age, which was also 19, and she had 2 pictures, and I saw that she had about 200 friends. After skimming over her page, I didn't actually know who she was, but I accepted the friend request. Our mutual friends were some people who I had gone to high school with, but didn't really know all that well as one other person who I didn't go to high school with, but lived in the general area. Not too long after I accepted her request, she sent me a message. I went to the Messenger app and I started talking with her. She was really cool and we hit it off. We talked for probably about a week before we wanted to meet up. I knew that she lived in the area, but I didn't know exactly where. Veronica suggested that we meet at a local mall, and there was a really popular shopping center about 10 minutes from my house. We decided to meet that Saturday at 11 a.m. In the meantime, we kept talking quite a bit, just like usual. When it was Saturday, I drove to the mall and went inside. It was pretty busy with it being a weekend. I had let Veronica know when I was leaving, and I think she left at around the same time as me. When I got inside, I messaged her that I was there, but that's when she stopped replying to me initially. At first, she told me that she was inside the mall and would look for me, but after that, I told her where I was and she didn't go there. I was standing in the food court for like 10 minutes and didn't see any sign of her. I reached out to her again, but did not get a response. I did see that she had seen my message though. When she didn't show up for another 5 minutes, I decided to walk around the mall looking for her. I figured that maybe the signal on her phone was bad or something, or maybe she had put her phone in her pocket with our conversation still open. I was just telling myself things like that, but I started to get a bad feeling. The mall was pretty big. It wasn't like the Mall of America or anything, but it was a decent size, and it did have 2 levels. There were also a lot of people there, so it would be tough, but not impossible to find someone. At one point though, when I was looking around, I did see this one guy who kind of looked like he was staring at me from afar. When I walked all around the mall, I saw the guy again, but he was walking a ways back behind me. I walked around for maybe 20 minutes. I really wanted to meet Veronica, but the more I walked around, the more I felt like she wasn't actually there. Then, finally, I felt my phone vibrate. I looked, and Veronica had sent me a message. She said, "Come to the entrance by the food court." That was the first area that I had been, and I had told her when I was there. I walked back over to it, which took me about 2 or 3 minutes. When I got back there, I looked around. It was still crowded, but I didn't see Veronica. I was a good ways away from the entrance doors, and I started to walk over to them. But that's when I noticed that the same guy that I had seen multiple times before was right there. He was standing right by the entrance and kind of looking around. Then, when he made eye contact with me for a brief moment, he walked behind one of the doors. I started to get suspicious, and I decided that I was just going to leave, but I was going to leave in a different door than that one. I began walking in the opposite direction. When I did, I noticed the guy then start to walk through the food court towards me. I picked up the pace and turned a corner to another hallway. I walked quickly and did make it to the exit. I didn't see the man behind me when I made it there. After that, I walked around the mall on the outside until I made it to the parking lot that I had parked in. Then I drove home. By the time I was home, I looked and saw that I had a message from Veronica. The message said, "Why didn't you come to the food court entrance like I asked? Why did you just leave?" By this time, I knew that Veronica likely didn't exist, and the one guy that I saw was running the account. I asked her to send me a picture of herself right now. Then she blocked me. That pretty much confirmed my suspicions. I was disappointed, obviously, but I also felt good that I wasn't a victim to anything further than being catfished. From that point forward, I was much more careful with who I talked to online. I live by myself in a one-story house that I own. Last year, it was during the summertime, and I was sleeping with the window open a crack to let more cool air in. My bedroom is at the front side of the house, and there's a giant row of large bushes that are along the side of the house, and they stop just at the side of my window. I was woken up from my sleep when I heard the noise of rustling in the bushes. I'm a pretty light sleeper, but with the window open, the noise was rather loud. When I woke up, I looked to the window, but I kept my blinds down just above the roughly 3-inch crack in the window, so I really couldn't see outside at all. I flicked on the light, which was right at my bedside, and my room then lit up. I got out of bed and went to the window to see, but then I heard more rustling in the bushes. I didn't see anything as I walked over there, and I was quite confident that the noises were caused by an animal, likely a deer. There was a pretty big woods and a park bordering my next-door neighbor's backyard, so we would often get all kinds of wild animals wandering in our yards at night. When I got to the window, I lifted up the blinds and looked outside, but still didn't see anything. Whatever had been there was now gone. After that, I just went back to bed. Probably a couple of nights later, almost the exact same thing happened. I was once again sleeping and woke up in the night to the sound of the bushes moving. I had my window open a few inches again, and my blinds mostly down. Everything was just as it had been all week. I sat up and turned my lights on again. I looked to the window and just barely saw movement of something going away. I couldn't tell what it was at all because of how dark it was, but I had a feeling that maybe it wasn't an animal, but a person. I went over to the window and looked out of it again, but they were gone. This time, I closed the window and locked it and put the blinds down all the way. I was able to go back to bed after that without a problem. I was telling myself it was just an animal, but I just had a creepy feeling that it wasn't. The very next night, I was up late. It was a Friday night and I was watching TV in my bed. I hadn't put my blinds down yet because I wasn't ready to go to sleep. It was probably around 1 o'clock in the morning, and I saw something out of the corner of my eye. I turned and looked to the window. That's when I saw a man standing right there facing me, looking directly at me. He was wearing a white t-shirt and had long, sort of messy hair and a slight beard. When I saw him, he didn't run away. Instead, he started to approach the window. I ran out of the room to the farthest away location in the house that I could get to. Then I called the police. When I spoke with them, I told them everything. I even remembered to include how the man was likely at my house other nights too. Meanwhile, I didn't hear any more noises from the window or anything as I waited for the police, and when they arrived, they searched the entire property, but the man was now gone. I talked with them for a while, giving them all the details that I could, but ultimately, they left with me not feeling that much better. My only hope was the fact that the police showed up would scare the man from coming back. The next night, everything was fine, but the night after that, I woke up in the night to noise again. My window was closed now, so I would no longer hear the bushes moving. This time, I woke up to the sound of a bang against my bedroom window. It was a loud noise, as if somebody was trying to break the glass. I turned my light on and sat up. In the past, that scared the man off, but this time, it didn't. I heard another loud bang on the window. I couldn't see the guy because my blinds were closed, but I knew he was there, and I called the police again and ran out of the room. I couldn't believe how this guy would not leave me alone. There was then another loud bang from the window, and then another one moments later. This time, I heard the glass starting to break. I was so nervous that I ran to the front door and grabbed my keys. The next bang broke more glass, and the man was sure to get inside the house now. When I started to hear movement near the window, I opened my front door quietly, went outside, closed the door, and then sprinted out for my car. When I got inside, I started it and drove away from there. I drove around the block in nearby neighborhoods until I got another call from the police saying that they were there. When I returned, to my surprise, they had caught the man. It was a huge relief to me. He had broken into my house and smashed my window, and apparently was searching through the house for me and was found in my basement.